everybody. This is going to be a fun one. I'm going to talk about a couple of really important habits that some people don't talk about necessarily. They're quick and easy. And then we'll take some questions. It'll be a fun one. The first thing I want to talk about is basically when you're playing the guitar, there's often, a struggle in how to stop unwanted string noise. Like if I'm playing one note, let me turn off the delays, always very important. Muting the other track. This is stuff you have to do. It's like doing the dishes. Okay, here we go. All right, so now let's try. So here's what I'm talking about. If you're playing one note, now in this particular case, I'm slapping 4 or 5 or 6 strings. And you're not hearing any sound from those strings. You are hearing the muted thump from those strings. And it's really effective. I mean, it's very Chili Peppers. Let me do it with the track. So it's a great sound, I think. Now, you don't want to use that all the time. Sometimes you want to shrink to a medium version of that. Or if it's a double stop. But you see, I am still hearing some string ring. And then if you do like a really small range of motion, that works too. They're all valid and you should use all of them. But each of them are actually benefiting from something you may not know. And that is all of the flesh from all of these fingers and the thumb is basically resting on all the strings I'm not using. And I'm not thinking about this. So if you start to do this and make it a habit, eventually you won't think about it and it'll just happen. I think a lot of us do it, but a lot of us don't. So let me just show you what's happening here when I'm playing one note, okay? Which allows me to get this nice thump and scratch in time, in rhythm, from the muted strings. Or not, even if I'm doing this, you don't want to hear extra strings kind of poke out at random unwanted noises when you're, trying to make your music. So what's happening here is very simple. This finger right here is fretting the note, right? The tip of this finger is actually up against the A string. Now I'm going to go to the other camera here and get really close. Okay? So when I strike it with the pick, both strings, I'm just getting a nice thump from the A string. The middle of the tip is actually fretting the note, but the end of the tip is just pressed against here. Now, I'm doing the same thing with this finger. These two fingers are basically leaning against the A string and stopping it from sounding. And I do this 100% of the time when I'm fretting a note. I don't think about it, but the very tip is basically resting against the adjacent string and preventing it from making an unwanted sound. The middle of the tip is sounding the note. Now back to this G note on the D string. The rest of the fingers are doing the same thing. The index finger is laying right here across these two strings, preventing them from sounding, just laying over the top. And then the second finger is just laying right here, right? It's stopping this string, but it's also stopping this string. In fact, the flesh from both these fingers is leaning over the G string and stopping it from sounding. And then finally, the thumb is stopping the low E from sounding. So my kind of crude demonstration of how this is all working. Basically, all the flesh from the fingers of this hand is muting all the strings I'm not using. And the most important and unique, aspect of this is the tip of these two fingers. The tips is always, always, always stopping the adjacent string from sounding, and the actual flesh from these arching over is always, always, always stopping the sound of the adjacent string on this side. So on each side, you have part of the finger stopping the noise. If you're not doing that, start doing that, and then you will stop thinking about it, and it'll become second nature. Now, before we move on, now the next thing I want to talk about is pocket. Before we move on, I want to remind you guys, the first 10 people to sign up for the Masterclass today get 50% off. If you want to try the masterclass, today's a great day. And then after that ends, we have 30% off for the rest of the weekend. So 2 good sales today on the masterclass. Now I want to talk about pocket. This is the other habit I want to talk about here. And we have a little film that we made that's 2 minutes that I want to show to get us into this. So let's go ahead and play this clip. I love this drum groove. Now, when I play to it, I want my playing to feel good. And I know from kind of looking at the grid in Pro Tools, looking at the screen, that I play certain notes on the beat, other notes ahead of the beat, and other notes behind the beat. And it's all okay as long as you're within kind of different parameters. And indeed, riffs actually sound good when you are kind of massaging them around the beat. Some notes right on, some a little lazy, some a little rushed. I hate to use the word rushed because it's energetic. If it's just ahead of the beat, it can be cool. So let me play. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I don't know if you noticed or not, but when I went low, I tried to make it lazy. Now, if I look at it on the grid, it's probably right on the beat or just after the beat, but my intention was to try and draw that part of it back. So maybe I'm playing the rest of the riff on the beat, and that part of it, I try and pull it back. Let me try that. 1, 2, 3. Now that time it was a little too lazy. Okay, here are the last 3 notes. Bow, bow, bow. Now look at the first note, location 1. You see where the marker is? The mass, the front edge of this thing is considerably ahead of the beat. Okay, I wasn't aware of that when I did it. I was aware that these 2 notes were laid back. And look at that, there's location 2. Look how far behind the beat that is, okay? It's behind. Okay, location 3, that's behind the beat also. But I was not aware that I was actually ahead of the beat on the first note. When I listened back to this, I actually like it. In the moment, I thought, oh, that's too lazy. That's too far behind. But listen to it. It actually sounds pretty good. One more time. I'll play a little bit and have some fun with rhythm. Now, the thing that's most important when you play rhythm, and I'm not the only one that talks about this, is keeping your right hand going constantly. Whether you're doing large movements, medium movements, or really small movements, keep it going constantly. And that keeps you in the pocket with everybody else. Now, occasionally you can rest, but most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, this should be going all the time. And as I've always said, it either grabs the note you're playing, or it grabs the air above the note, or it grabs a muted note. Let me demonstrate. Here's the note. Here's the air. This going all the time allows me to play sporadically in the pocket. And then, of course, it's always great to grab the muted strings. You know, you can pretend you're a drummer. And I'm using sort of a medium pick for this, and I just cracked it. So, fresh horse, let me get rid of that. Get another medium pick. I find for rhythms, a softer pick makes me groove better. Not too soft. Actually, this one is a little hard. I'm going to try this one. I think it's going to be right. This is Herco. Wait. Dunlop. But do that. Just keep this thing loose. Keep it in motion constantly, and your pocket will be great. You can rest now and then, but for the most part, when you're playing small, medium, or big, keep it going, and that will keep you in the pocket. And I'm not the only one that talks about this. A lot of guitar players will tell you that this Corey Wong calls it the motor, and I agree with him about that. It's keep it going and then choose to either play the note, the air above the strings, or the muted strings, and you'll have great pocketed rhythm parts. I'll take some questions. Does this community believe that a high-end PRS is worth the price? Comparison to Sir Tom Anderson. They're all worth the price. Actually, I was listening to Phil McKnight talk about this about a half hour ago. They're all worth the price. And even the offshore guitars are made so well, they're worth the price. Yeah, if you're not seeing the discount when you try and sign up, rest assured it's there. And our customer service is instantaneous. Anytime somebody has a question, I field it, send it to my webmaster, Mary. And the reason we offer a free trial is so that if there's any issue whatsoever with any aspect of it, you have 14 days to decide to opt out. I insist upon that. People should know exactly what they're getting when they check out the Masterclass. And like I said, the first 10, we may have used all those up yet, I don't know. The first 10 today are 50% off, and then after that, for the rest of the weekend, it's 30% off the Masterclass. Ryan's asking, what's up, Jim? Well, the sun. And a fun weekend, I hope. Florian, I did not do the Grammys. I gave it to a friend of mine, Andrew Sinowick. I was too busy doing this kind of stuff to take the 2 weeks I needed to prepare and do the Grammys. So I'm kind of at that point where I'm spending so much time with the Masterclass and with YouTube and some other recording. I'm in another recording project right now. I had to say no. What cabs am I using the Marshalls in the amp room with? They're all 412s. I love 412s. And I have some vintage speakers that I've collected. So for this sound, I'm using the divided by 13, but it's going through a vintage Marshall cabinet with pre-Rolla Celestians. So super old speakers. And here's a question about the Strandberg guitar. I'm wild about those Strandbergs. I love the way they look. I love the weird frets. I will be getting a Strandberg, definitely, and making a video about it. I love those crazy futuristic shapes. They're also really, really light, too. And Beata was telling me that it's kind of crazy, the one with the really funny frets on it, the dip in the frets, it plays so in tune that it's kind of disconcerting to hear a guitar that in tune. So I'm really looking forward to it. Here's a question that I think is interesting. I think somebody, I forget who it was, but it just passed by. Oh, there it is, L. Scott Music. How often do you send guitars out for refrets? I love really, really fat new frets. Part of the reason I love new guitars is because the frets are big and fat and new. And when I find a vintage guitar that's been refretted with big, fat, new frets, that's the one I want to buy because it's been devalued because of that, and it plays great because of that. I don't really refret guitars, although I have an Les Paul R9. I have a Les Paul R9 from the early 2000s that I'd like to refret because it's got a beautiful top, and the frets are not tall enough. So I might have that one refretted. So I really never do refrets. I usually buy guitars that have the frets I want. But we should talk about Tom Bukovac, because anytime he gets a vintage guitar that he loves, he doesn't care if he dings the value. He refrets it, and that's so smart. And so it's that's a stand-up thing, to take a vintage guitar and not worry about losing some value and refret it, because then it'll play great and he can use it to make great sounds. I really respect that. I'm with him on that. These vintage guitars are amazing, but the frets are often they're just shot, or they just need to be replaced, So I always look for the player grade vintage guitar that's been refretted. That's the one I look for. So anyway. Yeah, Mike, that's the thing about the Masterclass. 2 weeks, try it, and you go, I don't need this. Just opt out. And if you can't opt out, we'll do it for you. That's the thing. I want everybody to be happy. And I have people who forget to opt out, and they get charged by mistake, and they go, oh, I got charged, I forgot, and I give them their money back. It's a total pleasure. Everybody's happy, whether they are Masterclass members or ex-Masterclass members. Everybody stays happy. That's my creed. Oh, thank you for asking about this. I bought this guitar because I wanted to do a episode on David Grissom. I bought it, and the episode is on the YouTube channel. It's from like 2.5 years ago. It's just, I saw it. I really wanted the aquatic blue, because it's even more blue than this. This is blue jean blue, but I'm actually glad I got this, because at certain times it really is as deep as the aquatic one. And the flame is crazy, and it sounds crazy, and it's my favorite weight, which is just a little over 7.5 pounds. If any of you ever get a chance to try a David Grissom model PRS, it might be in some ways the best designed PRS ever. I mean, the story is very familiar, but he spent 20 years designing this guitar, trying to, 50 different pickups. I mean, he spent 2 decades basically developing this guitar. Now, it looks like a PRS, but all the stuff, and a lot of the stuff that he invented has gone into all the PRSs, so he really deserves a lot of credit. So yeah, I just love it. The David Grissom PRS is amazing, and I bought this. It was back to your question about expensive guitars. It was pre-owned, and it was expensive, and and that's the other thing. They're so well made, and the consistency is so great that when you get it and it shows up, it's going to play great, and it did, and it does. I just lowered the action a little bit. I put 9 through 42 on it because I like lighter strings. Even thinking of heading to 8s soon on some guitars. Lowered the action, put 9s on it, and it sounds so good to me. Okay? All right. So then play some more, look at questions some more. Yeah. That question is too good, and it is based on what I began this YouTube video about. How do you mute the other strings if you're fretting a note with your index or middle finger? Now check this out. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. See, it's not the tip of the finger that's fretting the note. It's the middle of the tip. The edge of the tip. Now, of course, there's a harmonic there. These strings are noisy when you slap them, but they're not ringing. That's the point. If I go, neither of these strings are going to ring at all or join the actual sound of the note. So it's the same thing. The arch from this, move over to this camera notch if you would, the arch from the index finger is blocking the adjacent B string, and the arch from the index finger is blocking the the tip of the index finger is blocking the D string. Same with the second finger. So your question basically is, if you're using one finger, you can still do this same muting, basically. And then, now in this case, check this out. You do have a point here. There is no way that I'm going to be able to mute the A string, right? Because the thumb doesn't reach it, and the index finger doesn't reach it. So in this case, I have to actually adjust my picking so I never get near that. So the picking range will be small. I won't be able to go, right? Whereas if I have all the fingers, I can mute all the strings. But really, really good point you brought up, because it does reveal that there is a string that is not being muted right now, and that's the A string. So I have to adjust my picking so I don't hit it. There you go. Great question. I'm glad you asked it. So I had to stop playing. So let me start playing again. The other thing I always try and do is get my little finger into the action. I want to keep this thing strong. I want to use it a lot if I can. Because if I come up here high in the neck, I tend to use my three fingers. Because there's not a lot of space up here, so you have to squish them all in up here. So consciously try and work the little finger back in, and you get some really nice spreads with the little finger, right? Well, that one wasn't so nice. This one's nicer. Greg Denson is asking, have I been affected by the tube shortage at all? Okay. The amps I own, I use them very lightly. And indeed, the one I use the most is this one right here, this Divide by 13 RSA 23. If I treat it well, it goes years without needing a tube change. And when it does need a tube change, it's usually just one tube. So I think a lot of that has been, you know, it's great for people to talk about. It's great for people who own tubes to double the prices of their tubes. There's a lot of stuff that is positive about owning tubes and having a tube shortage. You can, you know, just there's a tube shortage and you're in the tube business, you can charge a lot more. Now, I talked to my friend at Matchless who makes these amps the other night, and there is a tube shortage that is affecting him, but he's finding workarounds. But for me, I am very careful with these things. They're lightly used, and even the one that's heavily used, like this Divided by 13, the tubes never break. So, you know, it's like I kind of don't get it. I don't really wear out tubes, and I don't know people who really do wear out tubes. If you treat them well, and you use your standby switch, and you always plug in a speaker, and you turn the thing off. Here's a funny story. One time I went to Europe for 2 weeks, and I left 2 of these amps on for 14 days. I didn't tell you that, Nigel, because it was just like I left 2 amps on for 2 weeks solid while I was away, and one of them had to be retubed. My nailer, it was done. But I don't. Anyway, don't worry about it. You know, it is really tough for the guys making amps because they like certain tubes for the sounds of their amps. So anyway, it's going to be okay. And some other companies might. There's an American company that might step up and start making tubes. I forgot which one it is. But I got an email. Some of us got an email from this American company that's thinking about making tubes. So anyway, guys, we're at the end of our thing. I want to thank you all so much for being so nice and having great questions and showing up for this. Once again, there's a really great sale on the Masterclass this weekend. Just check it out. And we're really, really great with any questions you might send to our admin account. And we always take good care of everybody and make sure nobody pays who doesn't want to. I mean, we're great with customer service. I've never talked about that, but we're great with it. Anyway, I'm going to play us out. Guys, we'll see you on the next one. I should be doing this again in 2 weeks, and there'll be another video next week. So about once a week, you'll see me on YouTube. Here we go. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.